The air on the red carpet was a living, breathing entity, a maelstrom of flashing lights and a roaring, human-sized wave of sound. The kind of noise that didn't just assault the ears but vibrated in the bones. Wang Yibo, a master of controlled energy, moved through it with his usual quiet grace. His expression was a carefully constructed mask of professional detachment, a subtle smile, a polite wave, a cool, focused gaze. But to a single person beside him, the mask was transparent. Xiao Zhan'S, who knew the quiet language of his partner's eyes, saw the micro-tremor in his hand, the almost imperceptible tensing of his jaw. The crowd was an orchestra of chaos, and Wang Yibo, for all his ironclad discipline, was out of tune. It was a vulnerability that the world never saw. In public, Wang Yibo was the unflappable force of nature, the cool king of the stage. But in private, Xiao Zhan'S knew he was a man who, at times, was overwhelmed by the sheer, unadulterated sensory overload of a world that never stopped screaming. He was an introvert, a quiet soul forced to perform in a hurricane of noise, and tonight, the storm was at its peak. As they moved down the carpet, a new wave of camera flashes exploded, a violent, blinding storm of white light. Wang Yibo flinched, a subtle, almost invisible movement that only Xiao Zhan'S could have registered. In that fraction of a second, an instinctive, unthinking, and utterly profound reaction occurred. The mind-blowing scene didn't happen in a grand gesture. It unfolded in a quiet, protective, and completely unscripted act of love. Without a moment's hesitation, Xiao Zhan'S didn't pull him closer or whisper a comforting word. He simply shifted his body, his broad shoulders subtly angling to create a physical buffer between Wang Yibo and the most aggressive bank of photographers. His left hand, which had been resting casually on Yibo's arm, subtly changed. The hand didn't just rest, it became a firm, anchoring presence, his fingers pressing with a quiet, reassuring pressure that said, "I've got you. Don't worry." His gaze, which had been on the crowd, now swiveled to meet Wang Yibo's eyes for a fleeting second, a silent command and a fierce promise. He was a silent bodyguard, a human shield, using nothing but his body and a single loving touch to fend off a storm. The main cameras on the red carpet, focused on their faces, their smiles, and their formal attire, missed it entirely. The moment was too fast, too subtle, too intimate to be captured by a professional lens. But a lone fan, a photographer with a worn-out camera on a balcony overlooking the carpet, a person with no professional pressure to get the perfect shot, had been snapping a long-lens shot of the entire scene, hoping to capture the chaotic beauty of the red carpet. In the chaos of his rapid-fire shutter clicks, he captured a single blurry, almost unremarkable frame. A frame that, to a professional eye, would have been immediately discarded. But in that blurry image, a profound, breathtaking truth lay hidden. Weeks passed. The viral pictures from the awards show were the usual polished, professional masterpieces. The world celebrated the elegant stars, unaware of the quiet battle that had taken place. Then came the mind-blowing revelation. A fan account, sifting through the thousands of fan photos posted online, stumbled upon the blurry, low-quality image from the balcony. It was a wide shot, the two figures almost lost in the crowd. But something was off about the image. The fan, with an instinctual curiosity, zoomed in, and then zoomed in again. And then, with a gasp, they saw it. They didn't see a public display of affection. They saw something far more profound. They saw Xiao Zhan'S face, his eyes fixed on Wang Yibo with an expression of fierce, unblinking protection. His body was a subtle, unyielding wall. And his hand on Wang Yibo's arm wasn't a casual touch. It was a grip, an anchor, a testament to a bond that was stronger than any physical barrier. The photo was not an act, it was an instinct. It was the raw, unpolished, and accidental truth. The caption that accompanied the post was simple, but it spoke 1,000 words. He wasn't posing for the cameras. He was protecting him from the noise. The internet, a seething ocean of speculation, didn't erupt in a frenzy of questions. It quieted into a collective, awed silence. The photo went viral, not as a source of gossip, but as a masterpiece of profound, unspoken love. It was a single blurry frame that was more honest than 1,000 professionally staged shots. The world, which had thought of them as just a couple of friends, now saw them as something else entirely. It saw them as a single, unbreakable unit, a sanctuary in a world that was too loud. The final mind-blowing scene unfolded in a quiet, sunlit room, just days after the photo went viral. Xiao Zhan'S and Wang Yibo were together, their phones quiet, their world a tranquil silence. They had seen the photo. It was the first thing they talked about. Wang Yibo, who had never admitted to the full extent of his anxiety in public, looked at Xiao Zhan, his eyes full of a profound, raw vulnerability. "I was drowning out there," he confessed, his voice a low, honest whisper. "I thought you couldn't tell." Xiao Zhan smiled, a soft, gentle expression that reached his eyes. "I didn't think," he said simply. "I just reacted. My body just moved. It knew you were in trouble before I did." He reached out and, with the same loving grace from the red carpet, took Wang Yibo's hand. He didn't say a word. He just held it, his fingers lacing with his, a quiet, reassuring presence in the silence. The photo, a single blurry image, had revealed to the world a truth they had only ever known in their hearts, that their love was not a performance. It was a quiet, unwavering force that had, in the end, set them free. The photo of Xiao Zhan's protective gesture, the one that showed him shielding Wang Yibo from the sensory chaos of the red carpet, had gone viral. It wasn't a posed shot, but a grainy, accidental capture that became a powerful testament to a love that was fierce and private. The world had found their secret, and instead of tearing it apart, it had embraced it. The image had gone from a low-quality frame to a cultural phenomenon, a symbol of a bond that was stronger than any physical barrier. A few months later, at another high-profile award ceremony, the air was filled with a new, profound sense of reverence. The questions from reporters were no longer intrusive. They were laced with a genuine curiosity about a love that was so honest it had transcended the need for words. The mind-blowing scene began when a host on the red carpet, holding a microphone, asked a question that was simple, but laced with a deep and intimate understanding. "Mr. Xiao," the host began, her voice warm, "the public saw the most beautiful thing that night on the red carpet. They saw your protective gesture toward Mr. Wang. It was a very powerful image. What was going through your mind in that moment?" The entire crowd went silent. In the past, this question would have been a moment of intense awkwardness, a polite but firm deflection. They were actors, not a public display. But now, in the face of a love that had become a source of strength, something different happened. Xiao Zhan, who had been listening intently, looked at the host. He didn't smile his usual public smile. He gave her a quiet, knowing look, and then, his voice a low, confident rumble, he spoke. "I wasn't thinking," he said simply. "It wasn't a choice. It was a reaction." He then looked at Wang Yibo, a silent conversation passing between them that only they could understand. He then, in a slow, deliberate motion, in full view of the cameras, reached out and, with an effortless, graceful movement that was a mirror of the viral photo, gently placed his hand on Wang Yibo's back. This time, it wasn't accidental. It was a conscious, public gesture that confirmed the truth of the photo. It was a silent, beautiful, and deeply personal act. The cameras, which had been trained on his face, quickly pivoted to capture the moment. It wasn't a performance. It was a public display of a private, intimate truth. It was a silent, beautiful confirmation that their love was not a script to be followed, but a reality to be lived. The host, a seasoned professional who had seen everything, was speechless. The crowd didn't erupt. They simply watched in a collective, stunned silence. The mind-blowing truth was that they had not just confirmed their love. They had just performed a piece of their real lives in front of the entire world. The line between their art and their reality had completely blurred, and in that moment, they didn't care. The final scene unfolded hours later, in the quiet sanctuary of their car. The world outside was celebrating their bravery, calling them courageous. Xiao Zhan was sitting next to Wang Yibo, who, despite the long night, looked more at peace than he ever had. "The public thinks you're brave for what you just did," Xiao Zhan murmured, his voice soft with emotion. "You just told the world that our love is real." Wang Yibo looked at him, and his rare, genuine smile touched his lips. "I didn't do it to be brave, Zhan'Ji," he said, his voice low and confident. "I did it because I'm not afraid anymore. The movie scene was just a mirror. The real story is us. And the most powerful love stories are the ones that don't need a script." The final, breathtaking truth of their love story wasn't a grand, dramatic confession or a hidden symbol. It was the simple, beautiful fact that their love had become a source of peace, a quiet, unwavering force that had transformed their fear into courage. They had, in the end, not just revealed a secret. They had set themselves free. The moment Wang Yibo brushed the imaginary lint from Xiao Zhan'S suit at the premiere, the world held its breath. It wasn't just a gesture, it was an echo, a conscious mirroring of the movie scene that had just captivated millions. The cameras didn't just capture a moment, they captured the truth, a public confirmation of a private love. The internet, instead of erupting in a frenzied explosion of headlines, fell into a kind of stunned, reverent silence. It was as if they had been handed the final beautiful piece of a puzzle they had been trying to solve for years. The narrative had shifted completely. They were no longer a secret to be uncovered, they were a love story to be witnessed. The next mind-blowing scene wasn't a public event but a quiet, intimate moment that unfolded in the sanctuary of their home. A few weeks after the premiere, they were sitting together, watching old fan compilations, the kind of videos that meticulously charted their history through fleeting glances and shared laughter. They watched the footage from the very beginning of their journey, a time when they were still navigating the complex waters of friendship and something deeper. Wang Yibo, who had always been a man of immense control, watched himself on screen, his face a careful mask of cool detachment. He saw the way he would refuse to make eye contact, the rigid set of his shoulders. And then, they saw a moment that neither of them had ever fully processed before. It was a clip from a show, a quick, almost imperceptible moment. Xiao Zhan had just finished speaking, and his face was alight with genuine, unfiltered emotion. The camera cut to Wang Yibo, whose back was to the camera. But in the footage, he saw himself, without thinking, turn his head ever so slightly. A tiny, almost invisible gesture. His gaze, in that moment, was not on a host or a camera, but on Xiao Zhan's face. He wasn't acting. He wasn't posing. He was just watching, a quiet, unblinking witness to a beauty he was too afraid to acknowledge. The most mind-blowing truth was not that the love had developed over time, but that it had been there all along, hidden in plain sight, woven into the fabric of their lives. Wang Yibo paused the video. He looked at Xiao Zhan, his eyes wide with a new, profound understanding. "I was so afraid back then," he confessed, his voice a low, honest rumble. "I thought if I didn't acknowledge it, the world couldn't see it. I thought if I didn't look at you, no one could see how much I loved you. I was trying to hide it from the world, but I was also trying to hide it from myself." Xiao Zhan reached for his hand, his fingers lacing with his. "You were never hiding it from me," he said, his voice soft. "Your eyes were always louder than your words. I knew. I always knew." The public saw a movie scene that mirrored their lives. The truth was that their lives had been a continuous, beautiful movie scene from the very beginning. The final mind-blowing scene didn't involve cameras or flashbulbs. It happened on a quiet Sunday afternoon, in a simple cafe, a world away from the chaos of their celebrity lives. They were sitting at a small table, a few feet from the window, their faces relaxed, their guards completely down. A young woman, a fan with a look of immense courage in her eyes, walked over to their table. She wasn't holding a phone for a photo or a pen for an autograph. She simply looked at them, and with a voice full of quiet reverence, she said, "Thank you." Wang Yibo, who had been a fortress of guarded silence for years, simply smiled, a genuine, unbidden curve of his lips that was no longer rare. "For what?" he asked, his voice gentle. "For being yourselves," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. "For showing us that the most powerful love stories are not in the movies, but in real life. You gave me the courage to not be afraid to be who I am." And with that, she turned and walked away, leaving them in a profound, understanding silence. The ultimate truth, the final, breathtaking revelation, was not that their love was just a secret that had been revealed. It was that it had become something more. It had become a gift to the world. A source of courage and hope, a silent, powerful testament to the idea that love, in its purest form, has no need for a script, for it is a force that is far more powerful and beautiful than any words could ever describe.